So Lydia Lozano is the reserve manager with Nature and Culture International at Reserve Monte, which is, and she'll tell you all about it, but it's a really amazing effort that is a network of protected area, of private lands within the government protected area of the ANP, National Park of the Sierra de Álamos and the Rio Cuchahaqui. When I first met Lydia and went down and saw what they were doing, I was blown away. It is an absolutely first-class organization and institution and support network working directly with the local communities and offering an unparalleled access for people that visit, and especially scientists that want to come work there. This is the land of jaguars, of military macaws, of lechuguilla, of incredible traditional ecological knowledge, and it's all at our fingertips because of your efforts and your efforts to conserve them. And so it was just a no-brainer, and we're so fortunate that you could come up here to have Lydia share with us what they're doing. It's really remarkable. So Lydia, welcome. Thank you.
No high expectations on my talk after that introduction. So I want to thank Ben and Anna for inviting me here, and for everyone that came to hear about what we're doing in Mexico. And I usually get really nervous by talking in public in a different language that I'm not used to speaking every day. So if I make any mistakes, please, you can ask me. But I was trying to say, or you can, if you have questions, please do. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I usually make this mistake about starting to talk about our work, but I never introduce myself. So I want you to know a little bit about me. So I'm Lydia Lozano, like Ben said. I'm the program director for Nature and Culture International, and I've been working for NCI almost 7 years. I moved to Álamos for this job. I'm a biologist. I was born and raised in Culiacán, Sinaloa, which is a bit farther south from Álamos. And I have a specialty in zoology. I went to La Universidad Autónoma de Sinaloa for college. I started working as a program coordinator for 3 years, and then I became the program director after that, and I've been working as a program director for 4 years. So this is my family. I have 2 daughters, Violeta, and she's here with me. And she's my biggest fan, so I'm going to try to make a good talk for her. And I have Celeste, and she's 2 years old. My husband, Chuy, he's a biologist as well. And I wasn't going to mention this, but since Jeff is here, so when Jeff came to Álamos, he was working in other projects where they'll bring kids that were from the coast to the mountains. And my husband was one of those kids. And he became a biologist, and now he's in charge of one of the programs for Nature and Culture. So it does work, Jeff. So at first I was working with sea turtles. When I was in college, I would go to our field station down the coast, and I was spending all my time in nature. I was obsessed about mangroves and sea turtles. After that, I was working with birds, and I got the opportunity from Adam, and he's here, to work in banding birds, learning more about their breeding with shorebirds, and that's what I did until Violeta was born. And then after that, I was able to get to know all these great places, but I realized that a lot more was needed than just monitoring. Even though I love sea turtles and I love spending time with the field and birds, I realized that these places needed protection, and no one was doing nothing about it. We knew all about these species, but we were not doing anything to protect all these special places where I was doing research. So that's, after that, I was working in my own NGO for 2 years, and then I decided when Violeta was little that we wanted to move to a small town where she could grow up in a smaller town closer to nature, and that's where I got the opportunity to work for NCI, and that's where I've been working for the past 7 years. So Nature and Culture International is a nonprofit that is based in the US that focuses all of its conservation efforts in Latin America biodiversity. In Mexico, we have been working for the past 15 years, and we have created local partners in each one of the countries that we're working at. In Mexico, we're Naturaleza y Cultura Sierra Madre. And this is a big part because when we have big nonprofits that come from the U.S., they usually expect for people from the U.S. to be working in the countries that the biodiversity is being protected, but NCI has a different model and approach to this. So all of the people that work for NCI in each one of the countries are from that country, and we're local people, and we create our, in this case, Mexican nonprofit, Peru nonprofit, or Ecuador nonprofit. Our mission is to support the conservation of the cultural and biological diversity. And when they did this, they didn't realize how hard it was to put cultural diversity in our mission through the establishment of natural protected areas, whether they're public, private, or community-based. This is our team in Mexico. Most of you know Jennifer McKay, and she's part of our team. She's a fundraiser. I've been working there for 7 years, and then we have the technicians. These are our field technicians, this is our administrative team, and these are the guardians. I'll tell you about them a little bit more after this. So like Ben said, people think about the dry forest and think about Sonora, and they always see desert and see dry forest. But this is how Alamos looks like during the monsoon season. So it is really dry when it's dry, but then after just one rain, after a week, this is how it looks like. So why did nature and culture decided to work in Alamos? Alamos is a very special place, and for the same reason, federal protected area was established 18 years ago, well, 23 years ago, but has been working for the past 18 years. So Alamos is where the northernmost distribution of the contiguous system of the tropical dry forest is. I'm going to name tropical dry forest as TDF, that's the reason I added this. Whereas the highest diversity in the state of Sonora relies, and we have species that represent desert ecosystem. We have a very high diversity in cacti species, but we also have a lot of tropical species that are mixed, that behave differently than further south. So this makes the ecosystem in Alamos very special. We also have a lot of endemic and micro-endemic species like the virgin palm that you can see over here. This is only endemic to Alamos after a publication from last year. I learned that last year. And the opportunity to protect the only water source for the town of Alamos. This was one of our biggest discovery, and one of our biggest and strong, I'm gonna say this, like the way that we are able to convince other people why the protection of this ecosystem is important. Because when we talk about jaguars, most of the cattle ranchers don't agree on us, that we should be protecting jaguars. And then we realized that when you're talking about water, the quality of the water and the availability of the water, you can talk to everyone. So when we realized that all the water that was being used in the town of Alamos came from this watershed, that was our strong argument that we were able to make with everyone, whether it was the local government, whether it was the local ranchers, or the conservationist community. And there was the existence of the federal protected area that could support NCI work in the area. A lot of people don't know that in Mexico, the federal protected area system doesn't work like in the US. In Mexico, all the protected areas are privately owned by ejidos or communities or just private owners, which makes it really hard for the CONAM, which is the Commission of Natural Protected Area, will be kind of like the National Park Service, to be able to actually apply conservation measurements. So a lot of reserves are more like paper reserves and then don't usually work because you're still own your land. And when it comes someone new from the government telling you that you cannot do what your grandparent has been doing and your dad has been doing and then you're still doing it, it's really hard. There's a lot of conflict within the communities where these natural protected areas were established. And we get that question a lot. Why are you buying land within a federal protected area if it's already a federal protected area? Well, it doesn't work that way in Mexico. It's a very different system that we have been able to study and kind of work around it to make it more effective when we're talking about conservation. So we started our program in 2004. What we started doing was purchasing properties that were available for us to be able to buy. We were looking for the funds, and there were a lot of, it was very exciting when you're thinking about being able to buy an acre of tropical dry forest and where the jaguar is, or where the virgin palm. So we were able to find these funds pretty easy, and it was very exciting. So we started in 2004, and we continued to purchase properties through the years until this year we purchased our 16th property. So we're protecting 2,400 hectares right now within the watershed of El Cuchujaque, which is the river that provides the water for Alamos. We have been working in Mexico for 15 years. So this is how Reserva Montemojino looks like. If you're thinking about acres, it's around 18,000 acres, what we're protecting right now. It's tropical dry forest ecosystem and pine oak ecosystems. This is where Alamos is located, right there in Northwest, right next to the border of Chihuahua and Sinaloa. And also you can see where the protected area that we're creating in relation to the federal protected area. So these right here that you can see is the federal protected area, and this is where we're purchasing our properties, right where the river is. So these properties, we do have some standards on how we acquire these properties. They need to be available, and the owner of the property needs to approach us. We don't push anyone into selling. But there's a lot of people that are around 80 years old, and they have been living in their ranches for their whole lives, but their kids already went to college and they're living in big cities, so they don't know what to do with their property. So we're trying to help them get a good retirement by selling their property, just letting them know that we're going to be taking care of their property the way they were doing it. And this has been a really strong agreement with owners approaching us first than any other buyer when they're thinking about selling their property. It needs to be contiguous to what we have already. When we're thinking about management, it's really hard. I'll tell you about the roads in a while. They're really hard to get to these properties. And also, we need to have at least 90% of pristine ecosystem within the properties. We don't have a problem with that. We usually get 95, 97 of really good coverage, forest coverage. We do that with Global Forest Watch, and we do that on the field as well. So this is how it looks, some of the properties that we're purchasing. And as you can see, this is really the water source of the whole area. So I want to tell you a little bit about what it requires for us to manage these properties. So we do the land purchase, but we need to establish limits with our neighbors that we're both agreeing on. This is hard because people usually want to take advantage of just 1 meter over here, 1 meter over there. So we're trying to do this as fair as possible. We do have the deeds. We have a GIS person in our office, but sometimes it's really hard when the deeds are from 1900. So this is a big challenge, but we do that with every property. We talk to our neighbors and we sign an agreement where we agree that the limit of the property is right there. And usually it works with our neighbors and it works for us. We do have a lot of infrastructure that we have been keeping for research purposes and environmental education purposes. Also, when it comes to management, all the guardians stay in these properties, so we have to keep the wells clean, we have to keep the houses, and when you're thinking about keeping those houses up, and it's a three-hour drive in a really dirt road, four-wheel drive road, and arroyos and everything, it looks really pretty, but it's really hard to maintain that. We have also tried, so all the reserve is fence, and it sounds so easy, but the whole reserve, it's fenced because we want to keep the cattle from our neighbors out. So we've been trying different techniques on fencing that are animal friendly. Like, we don't want a coyote to be able to stop right there. We want to keep the flow of the native fauna. So we've been testing different techniques on how we do that fencing. And sometimes it works, and sometimes a bull from our neighbors will take the whole fence out. But it is friendly. So when it comes to research, we have been promoting a lot of research with our partners. And this is one of the field stations that we have. They're very basic accommodation, but they're nicer than anything that I've been before in my college time. And we do have a lot of publications coming out from those research groups that are coming. We did a BioBlitz and we were able to extend a range of distribution of a snake. We're trying to, there's long-term studies on understanding how climate change affects this latitude for tropical dry forests, being the northern part of the distribution, and how does this affect a pristine ecosystem, because it does. We think it doesn't, but it does. And there's some theories, and there's people discussing this, and they'll know more about it than I do, because I thought some things and they were not true. And we're thinking about frost and freezes happening in this area that there wasn't before, wildfires that were not part of the ecosystem dynamic. All these things are being studied right now by local researchers, especially from Ciudad Obregón. And then they're doing studies on native palm species. And a couple of years ago, they were able to discover a third species of desert tortoise that were thought it was just one. So they were able to divide it into 3. So right now, there's a lot of study carrying out in animals for this new species of tortoise. We do carry out some monitoring ourselves. We like birds, so we're able to do research ourselves with some funding from the Soaring Joint Venture, National Park Service, the Tucson Audubon Society, and we did a 5-year study on resident species, because we usually know about migrants because there's a lot of the community, the international community, it's interested in what happened to migrants that breed in the US and Canada and go to Mexico to winter, and we know a lot about that too. We've been carrying Christmas bird count for the past 80 years now. But we didn't know much about our resident species, so we wanted to know more about what they needed. And after 5 years, we realized we had a really high diversity of species that were cavity nesting species, and we didn't know that. And when you're thinking about a cavity nesting species that might or not be in danger in your local red list, but then you have trees that they depend on, so it's kind of just being able to understand the whole dynamic and not only protecting the species, but the need of each one of the species. And we were able to identify species of trees that are not endangered or not protected within the reserve, but are needed by species that are endangered. So this is one of the things that we're doing more with local government and policies, local policies of conservation with CONAC, just trying to get different policies on how do we handle wildfire fuels, like snacks. Because cavity nesting species, they need snacks, and usually the policy is just cut them all down. But then you have lilac crown parrots that need those snacks, and you're cutting them down because you want to prevent a fire. So trying to change the perception on everything that happens when it comes to policy and the government, it's really hard. You really have to have a lot of information and to be able to prove that you need to change that policy and you need to change that management decision, because you want to do a management decision that is based on science that you have developed. So right now, we have the help of the Great Basin Bird Observatory that's analyzing all these data, but we wanted to get all the information out before that. And we have this program with kids, so we're working with the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum to create a bilingual workbook for kids, for them to just know that we have cavity nesting species, because it's not a term that usually kids would know, or myself. So this is things that we're doing ourselves, getting all this information, getting it out, and trying to change the perception on these species. We'll also do a camera tracking project, and this was a surprise for us, because we have heard about El Tigre, you know? El Tigre, it's the cows, it's over there. But we've never seen it. It's like a story, like a ghost story there. So we set the camera traps in 2013, and we got all these jaguar photos that were there. We were scared at first. I was like, oh my God, that's true, the tigre is there, and it's eating all the cows. So after that, you know, after being excited for a year about just looking at the camera traps and just looking at this amazing photo of jaguars, and then we started realizing that there was a social problem around it. And it was just like, we put it on hold for a while, and we're like, oh, I don't want to know about this with our neighbors and the cows, and I don't know how to deal with it. So we started reading a lot. We started getting new partners that have worked with this jaguar cattle conflict, and we started working with our neighbors and how they can prevent these jaguar cattle conflict. one of the things that we thought, it was the Alamos was just like passing over for jaguars. They would just go through north, through south, through Alamos, but we never thought it was a breeding population. But then in 2016, we were able to photograph our first female, and he was pregnant. So I was excited for a week after that. But then I was like, oh my God, they're breeding here. So it gives you a lot of responsibility just thinking about, I have to take care of my kids and also these cubs, but it was really exciting. So after that, we haven't got any other photo from females, but we do get to see some tracks from small jaguars with adult jaguars. So I'll tell you more about what we're doing with jaguars. Oh well. So these are the threats. So we do keep everything fenced, but sometimes the fence doesn't work. The arroyo just got too big, and the fence just got down, and the cows from my neighbor got in, and I don't know how to take them out because they're so comfortable in their reserve. So this happens every day. And then we also started having wildfires, which have never happened before. And these were not started by people, were started by lightnings in these areas that were really, really dry. And we realized this area has been disturbed before because we had a lot of exotic grasses within the reserve, because these properties once were used for cattle ranching. So we had buffalo grass, we have Johnson grass, and nothing can grow when there's buffalo grass. And this is the time where we started realizing that even though it's everyone's dream to have a project like this, we were doing actual conservation. We were protecting. We didn't need the government to do anything. We didn't need our neighbors to do anything. We were buying the land, taking all the cows out, and it was working. You could see the forest thrive. But then we realized that locally, the perception on our project was not positive. It was not positive because we were not respecting culture. Alamos, the main activity in Alamos is cattle ranching. So everyone you talk to, they're a ranchero, they're ganadero. The girl that cleans her office owns 2 cows, so she's a ganadera. Everyone has a cow. Oh, I was born and my grandpa gave me a cow, so that makes me a ganadera. So everyone, it's so within the culture there. Of course, we didn't want to keep, start raising cattle within the reserve or anything, but we realized that we became a project that was restricted, and it was private. And it was getting all the people out, but it was getting all the culture out, too. So it was a dream for me to work in a project like this for like 3 years when I started realizing all these. So there's these jaguar, cattle conflict, and then our neighbors don't see us as something positive. They think that I should be raising cattle. So we were just kind of talking to our guardians, talking to other people, and we realized we needed to do something. So we have several problems that we try to solve with something that we call a conservation agreement with our neighbors. We had exotic grass that it was impossible to handle. When you're out there, it's just impossible. It doesn't matter how much people you have out there. It just doesn't work. And then we thought, we believe in natural regeneration, but it wasn't happening because of these grasses. And then we had our neighbors that wanted somehow to take advantage of the grass that we had on the reserve. So what we did is we identified these spots where we knew that there were Johnson's or buffalo grass. We fenced them with our neighbors, and we let their cows in. Control with like 5 cows, 10 cows, depending on how much land that we wanted to kind of keep the fuel down. And they were really happy that we were doing that because we opened the reserve to them. And they're the locals. You know, I'm Mexican, but I'm from Culiacan. And I work, and this is my job. This is not my life to be out there, but this is my job. So this is what we do, and everything changed. Because suddenly the reserve was letting the cows in. So it was like all the time was talking about it. And then our neighbors were like, well, they wanted to help us because we're having a hard time with these 5 cows, and they're letting the cows in. And then after 3 years of just trying this and just talking to the guardians and just kind of reading some, papers on it, we realized that the grass was coming down and the secondary forest was growing. And this wasn't happening before. It wasn't happening. So in these areas, we don't let the cows in anymore. So we identify new patches of where these exotic grasses are. We talk to our neighbors. Of course, we know the neighbors. It's not just with everyone that wants to have an agreement with us. It's people that we know and that we're working with. So they're more open to listening to Jaguar anti-predation Jaguar techniques. They're more open to talking about no hunting or no logging or no other activities. And now we're friends. And just because we let 5 cows in some areas that we needed help that we're not able to handle. So this is one of the things that changes through time. The way that we saw conservation and how do we try to include people, whether they're rules or not, but how do we include like local culture into our work. And this is how we started working with more community outreach and community engagement programs, which is something that I didn't know how to do. So I think it failed for a couple of years. So we got a Disney Conservation Fund grant, and there was a goal there, and it was just a wildlife festival. So I was like, what's the animal that no one likes in Alamos? It was the jaguar, because everyone owns the cows, and everyone has lost a cow, whether it was a jaguar or not. Like 90% of the time it was not the jaguar, but of course we have to blame the tigre for everything. So we started doing the Day of the Jaguar. This is going to be our 5th year, and you're all invited to come. It's going to be the 4th and 5th of October. But we started doing it like something fun. Like, let's talk about jaguars, but let's talk about how jaguars have been included into our culture forever. You know, Guerrero Jaguar for the Aztecs, Yoko for the Mayos, or for the Yaquis. So that's kind of waking up these knowledge that has been there forever, but has been lost through time. So like your grandpa was telling me that they saw a Yoko, and everyone was like, oh yeah, that's true. Because at first, one of the stories was that I was bringing jaguars from Veracruz in a helicopter and dropping them on the reserve. And this is true. People thought that I was doing that. And I was like, I'm afraid to fly in a helicopter, but okay. So we wanted to change the perception. And it was really hard. At first, like we had like kids saying, you're doing a Day of the Jaguar, but you know, a jaguar just say the calf of my dad or something like that. And then after 5 years, we even got funding from the Instituto Sonorense de Cultura, which was huge because this year is being funded by a cultural institute in the state of Sonora. So it became something cultural. It was just not just like biodiversity. I was signing the agreement with them. It's like, oh, what's your festival? It's like guitarra clásica. And then I was like, poetry. What are you doing? Day of the Jaguar. And I was like, what are you doing here? But it became part of the culture. And we have around 44 different organizations working in conservation in Sonora, Sinaloa, Arizona, and Chihuahua coming every year. And we're expecting around 300 students to learn about all kinds of stuff and all the projects, and of course the jaguars. So you're all invited if you want to go. So another thing that just when we were dealing with this program, we were thinking about who's going to be the next program director, right? Even though I seem like a young person, I'm 34 now, but I'm always thinking like, who's going to love this project the way that I do, so you can carry it out. When you're talking about conservation, you have to go through generation. It's not just you. And so what we thought, it was the community of El Sabinito Sur, which is the closest community to the reserve. We needed to have them ready to take over the reserve. Being an organization and just doing it like an institution, it works for a while. You can set everything that needs to be set on the reserve. But in Mexico, that this reserve and all the land is always going to be privately owned, and there's always going to be people living out on the field, you need to have the support of these people. It's not going to work any other way, because the organization can stop getting funds, the organization can just stop working in Mexico or whatever, and everything can happen. Or your funders just decided to fund another project, or decide to go to the Amazons, which is more exciting than the tropical dry forest. And also, you have to set everything so it continues to work. And that's when we started thinking about the community engagement of El Sabinito Sur. So we have been working with the kids of this community for at least 6 years now. Some of these kids are going to high school now, and some of them are being paid by researchers to do the field time and the field monitoring when they're gone. And they're getting scholarships to continue their education from these researchers, because I usually talk to all the researchers and I'm really cool with them. It's like, yeah, of course you can do it. You have to put scholarships in your project. And that's kind of one of the things that I have. You have to add scholarship for kids in your project, because they're going to be taking over your project and they're going to be taking over my job. So we want to have, whether they're biologists or no, of course we'll be very happy if they become biologists, but whether they're biologists or no, they need to know about their land. So this is one of the things that we'll be doing. So I decided that we were working with kids and women. Sorry about all the guys, but it's really hard to convince someone that to do anything different than what they've been doing their whole life. So we started working these projects. Sorry, but it's true. But you know, kids are more open, and women are usually really open to do new things. And so they were really good at doing embroideries, but they were doing roses, they were doing all kinds of embroideries that were not representing their culture, and were not representing anything local. It was things that they were just copying from something else. So we started providing field guides. We started to provide photos of local endemic flora and fauna. And they started doing all these amazing embroideries. So they know when we have a turtle group that they're interested in turtles and tortoises, they have these amazing embroideries, all from tortoises and all from turtles, and they sell them all. And there's people that are actually admiring what they're doing. And this has really empowered them into doing more and wanting to do more, talking to their kids about doing more. So one of our main things with them is we want the girls from the community to want to take over this project. It hasn't happened up to this point, but I'm hoping it will. So this is one of the projects that we have, and Ben has an embroidery over there if you guys want to see it. I was supposed to bring some, but they didn't have right now because they just had a festival and they sold everything, and they're getting ready for Dia del Cagual as well. So yeah, so this is an amapa tree that's very common in Adam, and a jaguar, and someone apparently is going to get eaten by the jaguar. Really scared. So if you guys want to see it, I can pass it over if you guys want to see up close the embroidery. But this has really changed because they feel like they're getting money out of their talent. They became artists. They actually got invited by Scottsdale in these sister town something to actually put everything in the, how do you say this, I don't know what's the name of this, but La Embajada in Scottsdale, the embassy in Scottsdale, they were invited to put their work there. So they don't even know where Scottsdale is, but they got the invitation and they were super excited about this. So it has really changed the way they see themselves, the way they're raising their kids, and the way they see nature, because they're paying attention to the cardinal, to the amapa. They're paying attention to everything. And also, well, I really want to connect the next generation to nature, like I said before, and Ben has a bigger job there for the next generation. So I'm going to leave these kids ready for you, Ben. And then they're going to go to any college they want to go, hopefully. So this is our project in Alamos. If you have any questions at the end of the talk, I would love to take more questions. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this other project where we have a different approach. This is Reserva Estatal El Pitaya. So we thought about connecting a little bit more to other ecosystems that were somehow connected, whether it was culturally or naturally, to the ecosystem that we're protecting in Alamos. We thought it was time to do more in the region, thinking about region, not thinking just about these a small project that it's working, that we're doing things right, but how do we make an impact at a regional level? So this is where I started working when I first was out of college. Adam gave me the opportunity to work in the Naupatia field station, where they have been working for the past 15 years. And I fell in love with the place, and I wasn't able to do anything until recently for the area, because we've seen it through the years being pretty much clear. So I got this quote from a book from David Yedlin. It's about pitayas, the Estrangeiros Turberi. And it says, and I think it's a publication from 2006, it says, in Mexico, over 2 million acres of desert ecosystem has been cleared for agriculture and shrimp farms. And 50% of the time, this field doesn't work. They don't do anything with them. And almost half of the densest pitayas has been cleared, most of it since 1980. So this has been happening every year, more and more. And we just thought that we needed to do something like whatever. So we got a different approach. We got funded by the Fondo Mexicano. We realized that all the pitaya was owned by fishermen. And so we didn't start talking to them about the value of the pitaya, but we're talking about fish. So if you want to talk about something with a fisherman, you talk about fish. So we're talking to them, it's like, what are the species that you guys are fishing? Have you been fishing them over the years? No, we used to have different species, now we don't have them. How much fish do you have right now that you had before? And they were realizing that they were pretty much clearing the bahia as well from fish. So we started working with them. We worked with them for 2 years, just letting them know, like, just what are the fish that were fishing and what are the fish that were not fishing anymore. Or they were fishing, they had to migrate to Bahia de Quino or to somewhere else because there were not enough fish in the bay where they were like supporting of this community anymore. So after that, we talked to them, it's like, what about doing fisheries reserves? Because we wanted to introduce the term of a reserve. What happens when you protect your resource, right? So we did the fisheries reserve, and guess what? They're working. They decided where they wanted to do it, they're taking care of it themselves. We're not doing it with guardians, with anything, and they've been working. They're actually, we were there like 2 weeks ago, and they were surprised to see all of the fish that were in this fisheries reserve. And then we thought they were ready to listen about state reserve and pitaya. So this is a very different approach because we did a community-based program instead of just buying and excluding people. Because we had to include them before, after everything again. So this is what we did before. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we got funding from the World Land Trust for a year to be able to create all the files to support their reserve. And we have the okay with all the municipalities, we have the okay with at least 50% of the fishermen that own this land, and we have the okay with the state government. So we're hoping by next year to present all these files and be able to have 116,000 acres reserve. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? How are we going to do it? You can give me ideas because they're welcome. And just some of the challenges and opportunities that I see that we have is funding for long-term management of the natural protected areas that we are creating, because one of the things is the creation and the other thing is the management to make it actually work. Increase the opportunities for community engagement, whether it's Alamos or El Pitayal, it's a big challenge for us. The national government budget for conservation of natural protected area has been cut down in half every year. So right now they're basically letting everyone go. They don't have cars. I don't really know how they're doing it. Expand the NCI Mexico program to all southern Sonora. Is there other areas where we have opportunities to work with local communities to protect their resources? To continue to engage more researchers. We would like to know more about what we're doing and what we're protecting to be able to make better decisions instead of making all the mistakes that we have been making because we don't have enough information. And to think about a formal field station on the reserve that can, host researchers, host students, or just people that can help us fill the gaps of what we have. And well, thank you all, and I'll see you in October in Day of the Tower if you guys decide to go.
See why I'm so impressed. I'm almost thinking instead of a micro campus in India, we need one in Alamos, right? Questions? We definitely have time for questions, thoughts. Please, anyone.
Is Italia, you were talking about near the one that David Gavin set up,
Actually, Coteco and Zacate Blanco, which are the projects that he set up, are inside of what we're trying to protect, within the polygon of the protected area. Yeah, these areas are amazing. They've just been fenced and they look so good. Yeah. Please, questions?
¿Cómo combaten los incendios? ¿Tienen bomberos forestales?
Sí, tenemos brigadas, las brigadas forestales de la CONAFOR y de la CONAM.
Bueno.
I noticed on the map that you put up for Monte Mojino Reserve that you just have a big contiguous area of protected space. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little more about that. That's pretty unusual to be able to have, you know, a full contiguous space without little pieces that are missing out of that.
I think it was just luck, really. So when I started working for NCI, it looked really different. We had like two patches that we had properties over here, probably this property right here, and some of the ones that are over here. And they were not contiguous. And so the owners of these properties that would connect both parts of the reserve unit. So the negotiation with them was a little bit different. Because they knew it's like, if you want to connect the land, you know, you have to buy my property. But we just adopted that policy that it needed to be contiguous, because before that we were just buying opportunities. So we ended up having amazing properties, but they were really hard to manage. So after we connected with one of the properties right here, it's called El Bigote. I love that name, by the way. And it does look like a mustache like that. We just like, if it's contiguous, if we can afford it, and if it has really good habitat, we will buy it. And it depends a lot on who's funding the purchase, because we have the Turtle Conservancy. They have been amazing partners. The Desert Tortoise Council as well here in Tucson, because they usually want habitat that will protect tortoises. So we have to go and find the tortoises first. So we have these available properties, but we're buying the one that's contiguous, that has good ecosystem, and how it has tortoises. So it depends on that. But they're really, all the partners are really respectful in our decision on how to buy those properties. I'm hoping not to buy anything else right now. This is as much as we can handle.
Are there areas on the reserve that visitors to Alamos that aren't researchers can access?
Yes, they can, but we started realizing that sometimes it's hard for them to get. So you need to be prepared to camp, you need to be prepared for a really bad road, you need four-wheel drive to get there. In almost all the seasons, especially during the rainy season. And I was afraid that someone that would tell us that was prepared, and it happened, it has happened, that told us that we were prepared, and at the end it wasn't. There was a group that came recently, and they had some like accidents, they didn't know how to deal with it, so I'm kind of worried about that situation. So we're creating these like policy on how to visit their reserve, and like a liability something, release of responsibility as well. So we have to deal with a lot of like legal things related to it.
We're leading a trip as part of the series down to the reserve in October, and we thought we were going to have to really like sell it, and we timed it in the talks. It sold out really fast actually, so we may be able to offer future opportunities. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Roberto, por una use of the test site, is that contiguous to your property?
No, that's on the lower part of El Cochuhaki over here. That's, I don't know if you were able to see this laser thing. Yeah. Over like in the lower part of the watershed. We have been talking about donating to NCI, but we're just talking about it.
Can you clarify a little bit of the relationship between the fishing community and the Pattaya Pitaya project, I mean, is there a relationship?
They own the land. The fishermen own the land.
So, so they are then converting a lot of that to agriculture because the fishery is not productive? Is that?
Part of it, yeah. So we have been talking to the elderly in the community. It's an indigenous community, so they do respect like these elderly and ancient knowledge from them somehow. And they tell us that they used to have a lot of fish, so they only took the pitayas, and it was enough for them to be able to support their families, but it's not enough anymore. So they're selling their land to whatever. Like, we've realized sometimes it's like 10,000 pesos per hectare, which is nothing. Just like giving them away because they're in a hurry of getting money, and there's a lot of things that happens in this area that has to deal with more like indigenous community and also like human rights, I feel. So it's a different approach that we have. We're very respectful of that as well. Try to connect them, try to them realize that they, you know, that their rights are there, but it's like no one land over there. They've never worked with a nonprofit before, and that was just like letting them know who we were. We're like the Jaguar people because the logo of the Jaguar was there, so it's been a process.
So these are ejidatarios?
Ejidatarios, es ejidal. Sí.
¿Y es un solo ejido o varios?
Hay 7 ejidos. Sí.
What's your perception about the status in Sierra de
Can you be more specific?
Like, do you feel it's in good ecological conditions?
I feel it is.
Okay.
The thing about this federal protected area is that there aren't people, there's just one community within the reserve that lives there the whole year. And it's like a 30-family community. And the reserve is 93,000 hectares. So it's huge, and there's no people living there. Even though they're trying to have a mining company in one of the areas, there are threats. But it's in a pretty good shape, especially the part that's closest to Chihuahua.
The Sky Island, the Sierra itself.
I think that's the one that's more threatening because it's closer to towns, and that's where the mining company is trying to get in. CONAP is putting up a good fight, but I don't know what's going to happen.
I hope they win.
Well, me too.
What kind of mine?
Copper and gold.
Lydia, one thing I'm curious about is, so NCI is a large international NGO with most of their efforts focused in Ecuador. And kind of you talked about the allure of the tropics of the Amazon, of the equator area. And you're their only Mexico. Of course, you look at their holdings, it's like almost millions of acres down south in your project there. How does that conversation work with them in maintaining their focus on Mexico, and it's been a long time support now, but I'm just curious, focusing on the ground, but also you need to be focusing on the parent organization, how that works.
It's a funny conversation. So yeah, NCI started working in Ecuador to protecting the Amazon 20 years ago. And then 15 years ago, they started working in Sonora, and they started working in Peru. So the story that I've been told, and maybe people here know more about this story than I do, is that the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum researchers at the time brought Ivan Gayler, which is the founder of NCI, to Alamos. And he was just blown away by the trees that were there and the biodiversity and how pristine the ecosystem was. One of the things about the Mexico program, one of the things about Ecuador and Mexico is that Ecuador is the size of Sonora and a little bit of Chihuahua. That's how big Ecuador is. And I didn't realize this before I saw a map. And so just getting that, so for them to move around the country and to work at a country level, it's more easy than in Mexico. If we were a country NGO, can you imagine how many offices we need to work in Chiapas and Veracruz, and so the conversation started like, he was just blown away and just felt the need of the protection of this area. And that's how it went, like buying land, protecting, but we're not a program itself. When I started working for NCI, they started trying to get us into the structure of NCI, which is like philosophy of NCI, which is a bottom-up approach. We usually work where the reserves are. You know, like our office is not in Hermosillo, you know, it's based where the reserve is, because if you want to work with a community, you need to be there. That's one of the approaches of NCI. So that's the things that like kind of the rules that they set for us to work in Mexico. And it's also been a fight for us, because all people feel like it's more exciting, it's more sexy to protect the Amazons, especially right now, than to protect the tropical dry forests in Sonora. It's like, why? Why would you do that? And then we have all these amazing photos, and we have all these jaguars, which our logo is a jaguar, and no one had jaguar photos in any of the countries but in Mexico. Like, okay. So we started finding things that would connect us to Ecuador, like species in the tropical dry forests of Peru and Ecuador that we share, like the laughing falcon, that's in one of the photos. It's a very common species. The Guayacanes farther south are the Amapas here. So we started finding things that would connect us somehow, because if we're thinking about really global conservation, you cannot think about borders that way. And also, but you know, it's always like, oh, in South America we're doing that. And I was like, I'm in North America. You know, I'm part of the San Diego team right here. So just trying to make us, we always feel special, unique, and a little bit different than all the other projects, but we're able to connect the projects, I think, pretty well after realizing that we're, you know, Latin people trying to protect their habitat in Latin countries where there's needed. And another thing, and this is just an extra thing, there's no country that NCI works in, and NCI works in Peru, Brazil, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Colombia, that has such a pristine and contiguous ecosystem to protect. The Sierra Madre Occidental in Mexico is one of the last remaining corridors that is pretty much intact. The reason of that, we might discuss later, but it's contiguous, it's pristine, and it's protected somehow. So this is the only place where NCI works that has the opportunity to have an impact like that.
Thank you so much for connecting us. Join us next month to learn from Angelina Martinez about their work at Biodiversity. All right. Have a great night.